It's March of 2025. All your besties have AI-generated Ghibli icons. A rotund JD van stares back at you from your phone. Japan forcibly dissolves the Unification Church, and, most importantly, the newest installment of Assassin's Creed is coming out. The series is taking its first venture into East Asia with a story set in feudal-era Japan, and fans are excited to sneak around like a ninja and swing cool samurai swords in their favorite big-budget stealth game. But talk surrounding the game isn't just hype. Assassin's Creed Shadows has had a target on its back since the trailer was released a year ago, when it was revealed that the two playable characters are Naoe, a female shinobi, and Yasuke, a black samurai. Some people weren't happy about this. A black man in my Sengoku Japan? Ridiculous. DEI has gone out of control. You know, Yasuke wasn't actually a samurai. Ubisoft is rewriting history for woke points. They're disrespecting Japanese culture. When I first caught wind of this drama, I rolled my eyes and thought, yeah, I'm not touching that. It's a bunch of bigoted gamers whining, oh, I don't want to play as a black dude, and oh, I don't want to kiss a they-them as a black dude. This is just a Gamergate-style hate campaign exacerbated by weirdo online personalities. I don't want to engage with their criticism. This whole thing is unproductive and boring. The best thing to do is to disengage, make fun of it, and move on. That was my attitude until I found out that an author was run off the internet by English and Japanese-speaking Twitter users. I learned that the Assassin's Creed problem was brought up to the Prime Minister of Japan, and for some reason, Asmongold's face is plastered onto all these Japanese thumbnails. God damn it, now I care! My goal here isn't to rehash the drama around Assassin's Creed Shadows for the sake of defending it from anti-woke criticism. No, I'm interested in the Japanese coverage of the Asakuri Mondai, the Assassin's Creed problem. I realized that Japanese people were making different kinds of arguments against the game. Arguments that led to Prime Minister Ishiba saying, defacing a shrine is out of the question. It is an insult to the nation itself. Respecting the culture and religion of a country is fundamental, and we must make it clear that we will not simply accept acts that disregard them. This doesn't sound like a problem with diversity. How did Assassin's Creed reach this level of notoriety in Japan, and why is this the Prime Minister's concern? Much of the discussion surrounding Shadows occurred on X, the Everything app, among both American and Japanese netizens. A few months after releasing the trailer, Ubisoft posted a statement addressing Japanese audiences in both Japanese and English. Both parts of the world should have had access to the same kind of information, right? So why are their grievances so different? This is where our story begins. So let's see how this all started from the Japanese perspective, and for that, I'll be referencing the comic articles of Sadataro posted on itmedia.co.jp. The first Shadows trailer was released in May of 2024, and according to Sadataro, Japanese audiences were surprised by the reveal of Yasuke. The series up until this point had the player control game original characters, but here we have a real historical figure. Not only that, Yasuke is a person who is foreign to the game's featured country. Naoe, the Japanese shinobi, is also there, but fans noted that Ubisoft was doing something different. However, Japanese fans largely treated the criticism against Yasuke as an overseas thing, that it was mostly frantic Kaigai fans who were yelling, "No polikole!" I looked up a few Japanese listicles covering this topic, and concern over Yasuke as a playable character was consistently listed as a flame war in overseas circles. There was no racially charged reaction from the Japanese side, at least at first. So Japanese fans had no issue with the trailer? Well, not quite. Partially influenced by the overseas backlash, some Japanese people took a close look at the trailer and realized that the Japanese setting of Shadows felt a bit off. Square tatami mats, that's kinda odd, because they should be rectangular. Actually, I'm not sure if those retainers should be sitting like that. The Seiza posture became an explicit rule after Nobunaga during the Tokugawa shogunate. Wait, are they using incense at a Shinto shrine? That's like a Buddhist temple thing. Hold on, those retainers shouldn't be standing on the same plane as Nobunaga. They need to stand below him. Why is Yasuke in his armor in the middle of town? No one wears that unless they're in battle. He would have stuck out like a sore thumb. If you're unfamiliar with the Sengoku period, this sounds nitpicky, and I had to fact-check some of these critiques too. But once I noticed these things, they were kind of hard to ignore. Like, every Japanese person knows tatami mats are rectangular, and as much as Buddhism and Shintoism intertwine in Japan, it's jarring to see these clashing symbols hit you in the face one right after another. I also think the popularity of period dramas plays into this reaction. The NHK, Japan's equivalent to the BBC, has been producing year-long big-budget taiga dramas for 64 years now. Japanese audiences are accustomed to careful depictions of old Japan, including the Sengoku era. The Japanese landscapes and architecture of shadows are stunning, but these small inconsistencies in cultural details make it feel shallow, and that's a little harder to forgive in a post-Ghost of Tsushima and Shogun world. So Japanese users on Twitter posted about these questionable scenes from the trailer, which went viral, and people started digging into other parts of Shadow's production. This is where things get a bit harder to defend. People pointed out that some of the crests on the game's figurines are for the
Toyotomi
shogunate, not Nobunaga. You can't mix and match those. Some of the concept art seemed to heavily reference photos taken in the Taisho and Meiji eras, which are hundreds of years after the Sengoku era. People also accused Ubisoft for stealing photos from Japanese tourism websites based on the guardrails seen along the mountains. The Japanese version of the trailer had hard Chinese subtitles for some reason. People's gripe with Ubisoft was no longer just about historical inaccuracies. Now it involved accusations of plagiarism and doubts about whether Ubisoft cares about their Japanese audience. The more people looked into Ubisoft's work, the more sloppy and dubious it felt. As Japanese criticism ramped up and English language accounts adopted Japanese talking points to fuel their own disdain towards Shadows, Ubisoft made a post on Twitter addressing the Japanese fanbase to clarify their intentions. They stated that they put significant effort into ensuring an immersive and respectful representation of feudal-era Japan, but their intention has never been to present their game as factual representations of history or historical characters. They apologized for the concerns their promotional material caused within the Japanese community and requested that criticism not be directed at their collaborators, as they are in no way responsible for decisions taken by the creative teams. And finally, they defended their depiction of Yasuke as a samurai in Shadows while acknowledging that his status as a samurai is up for debate. Cue comparisons of Yasuke to Johnny Somali. This is why we can't have productive discussions online. With so much blatant racism on display, I don't fault Ubisoft for defending itself from backlash, especially as a response to Elon's tweet that exacerbated the controversy. However, I think the framing of Ubisoft's message comes off as dishonest. It functionally wanted to push back on racist criticism from the English community without addressing more understandable concerns from the Japanese audience. I suspect this was Ubisoft's strategy because the concept art plagiarism allegations were addressed on the Japanese Assassin's Creed Twitter account only in Japanese, as if to hide the criticisms from the English-speaking community. But I get it. To apologize about the depiction of Japan to a non-Japanese audience is awkward, and directly confronting online trolls is futile. Still, this message caused the most vehement of Shadow's critics to double down. They didn't accept Ubisoft's apology, saying that they were contradicting themselves. How can they state that Assassin's Creed doesn't intend to factually represent history, while in interviews they boasted about the historically accurate recreation of the world? By being a video game with magical artifacts and a secret society of assassins, you dimwit? Don't conveniently forget that. Yeah, it's annoying that the tatami mats aren't rectangular in the trailer, but you cannot tell me with a straight face this long-running historical action-adventure franchise is trying to besmirch Japanese culture, while Yasuke Simulator gets a pass because it's obviously satire. Oh, so Ubisoft deserves to be sued because it has object physics inside shrines, but if it's clearly comedic, it's fine to gun down samurai with silly accents as a black man wearing funny hats? Give me a break.
Foreigner.
What I'm trying to say is, we can take Ubisoft's message in good faith while acknowledging issues in their creative and business practices. But as hard as Ubisoft advocated for itself, it was too late. This discussion was already out of their control because it was no longer just about them. Separate from the production of Assassin's Creed Shadows was another point of contention: the debate whether Yasuke was actually a samurai. This had become a culture war in itself. So now I'm going to shift our focus to Yasuke and the book that was set to popularize him, Thomas Lockley's African Samurai. Psst! Hey, over here! It's intermission, Nil. Thanks for sticking around this far into the video. Working on this one drove me a little bit insane, for reasons you'll see later, so I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like to see your name or even a personally drawn portrait in my videos, consider donating to my Patreon. Even a free membership gets you access to some retrospective write-ups and progress updates. Thanks a bunch to my current members, and on to the rest of the video. Let's get the facts straight. Yasuke is a real historical figure. There are first-hand accounts of a black man in the Nobunaga Koki, a chronicle of Oda Nobunaga's life from 1568 to his death in 5082, written by Ota Yuichi, one of Nobunaga's vassals. Yasuke is also mentioned in the samurai Matsudaira Ietada's diary and reports from Jesuits from Louis Froisse. These texts describe how Yasuke was taken care of by the Lord, and he is also mentioned in scenes of the Honnoji incident, the event of Oda Nobunaga's death. According to Louis Froisse records, Yasuke was one of the few retainers who escaped the Honnoji incident. Yasuke ran from the temple to inform Nobunaga's son about the attack on his father. Froisse's records also mention that Yasuke's life was spared by Akechi Mitsuhide. Akechi considered him neither Japanese nor barely human and thought it was a waste to use his sword to cut someone less than an animal. Eesh. This is regarded as the most explicit occasion of discrimination Yasuke faced, by the way. Anyway, after the Honnoji incident, there are no records of what happened to Yasuke. Now, from what I know, we don't have texts by Yasuke himself, Oda Nobunaga, or the head Jesuit Yasuke served. And even in the previously mentioned diaries and reports, much of the details are focused on Nobunaga keeping a black bodyguard. There are very few specific details about Yasuke that we can draw from available texts. This is probably one of the biggest reasons he wasn't discussed much until recently. There's so little about him that we know, he only warrants a brief mention in history books about Oda Nobunaga's life, or an overview of the historical role of black people in Japan. In comes Thomas Lockley's African Samurai, the first non-fiction book written with Yasuke as a central figure. According to Wikipedia, Lockley is originally from Britain and currently works as a professor at Nihon University's School of Law, teaching history and English, with an emphasis on Japanese history from an international perspective. When you read African Samurai, it quickly becomes clear that Lockley wrote this book with his academic framework in mind. This book is as much about international relations in the late 16th century as it is about the figure Yasuke. What Lockley does is use Yasuke's perspective to guide those new to Japanese history, as well as pose him as a mystery to speculate on how an African man could not just end up in Japan, but be skilled enough to serve Oda Nobunaga himself. Lockley has an interest in Yasuke not so much as a black superhero, but in this miraculous case of international relations. Now, I'm going to hold back my specific praise and criticism about African Samurai for this video, but you can listen to my review on Patreon. I got an exclusive video there. What I do want to cover here is the online backlash that made Lockley leave the internet. Even though Lockley was not involved in the production of Assassin's Creed Shadows, many people suspected that he was the root of all the misinformation about Yasuke. He was blamed for spreading lies such as Japan is the birthplace of the African slave trade. Yeah, you heard that right. Ridiculous, isn't it? How can anyone claim that the island country of Japan, 7,000 miles away from Africa, started the African slave trade? Well, no one did. This rumor started because Lockley's Japanese book got misquoted. He was also harassed because of his book's title, African Samurai. Some people were very offended that Yasuke was treated as a samurai without question, even though there is no definitive proof that he was. Lockley's critics are convinced that he was so desperate to find traces of the African diaspora in Japan that he exaggerated Yasuke's legacy. They feel that Japanese history was rewritten by foreigners just to serve their globalist ideals. Their words, not mine. In June of 2024, Lockley froze his Facebook account due to hate mail. This event is probably what the Ubisoft statement about not criticizing collaborators was referring to. So, was Yasuke a real samurai? Lots of people online argue that we don't have enough evidence for Yasuke's samurai status, like his salary and the rank he held. Or they argue that the title of samurai is inherited, so Nobunaga randomly hiring a bodyguard doesn't make a guy a samurai. Others have responded, though, that the meaning of the word samurai changed over the years. By Nobunaga's time, it was a word used to describe anyone hired under a warrior family, of which Nobunaga was certainly the head. I even read that the word samurai just wasn't used that much at the time. This samurai argument quickly becomes about semantics and like, can I be real with you for a second? Do you care if Yasuke was a samurai or not? Cause I don't. When people argue that Yasuke isn't a samurai, they're trying to downplay his significance, but they don't seem to realize that what makes Yasuke interesting isn't the official title samurai, it's that he was a black guy in Sengoku-era Japan. It's that he served under goddamn Oda Nobunaga, Japan's coolest warlord. I don't know what other historical Japanese figure has as many anime and video game appearances as him. Look at him! Or her, or him. Don't they look rad in that cape? Anyway, Nobunaga gave Yasuke a sword, so he is at least spiritually a samurai. And that's the general impression I get from how a lot of Japanese scholars treat Yasuke too. They recognize him as a warrior who served under Nobunaga. He occupies an intriguing place in Japanese history worth paying attention to, either as a brave figure who survived the Honnoji incident or as an example of Nobunaga's fascination with the West. And he has appeared in Japanese media before. Video game publisher Koei Tecmo features Yasuke in Nioh and Nioh 2. They also put him in their strategy game Nobunaga's Ambitions as a DLC officer. Nagoriyuki from Guilty Gear is based on Yasuke. Yasuke makes an appearance in the manga Hyogemono, and he kinda appears in Nobunaga Concerto as a black American former baseball player whose real name is Young. Don't think about that one too hard. My point is, he's notable enough as a historical figure that historians recognize him, and some Japanese creators reference him in their works. Yasuke did not come out of nowhere, and all this nitpicking about his samurai status only started because of online trolls. Bringing this all back to Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think the choice of making Yasuke a main character was a no-brainer. He's not only a fish-out-of-water character who learns about Japan alongside the player, but he ends up right in the middle of a dramatic historic event. If Japanese culture and feudal society are as complicated as Ubisoft's critics claim, it makes so much sense to choose Yasuke as the audience surrogate. And don't you think that's natural for a video game like Assassin's Creed? Ubisoft is a AAA game company whose goal isn't just making a fun game, but a global product that makes lots of money. Their market isn't anime fans familiar with Japanese history, it's like everyone. Even if we put aside wokeness, they need to appeal and be accessible to as many people as possible. So, with that in mind, what are fair and realistic expectations for Shadows as a product? I think in an ideal world, Shadows would have been made in a way much like Ghost of Tsushima, and I believe Ubisoft tried to based on their interviews. As they said in their statements, they consulted with Japanese historians to make an engaging and realistic Japanese setting. But should we compare them to Ghost of Tsushima Studios' Sucker Punch, which had about 160 employees at the time? Sucker Punch was a much smaller, tighter-knit studio that had more breathing room for employees to talk to each other. Do you think Ubisoft and its 17,000 employees have that? When I see things like the square tatami mats and Nobunaga standing on the same plane as his retainers in the Shadows trailer, I don't see Ubisoft failing to do research. What I see is a trailer animator who didn't get a memo. I see an environment modeler who was just told to create the interior of a Japanese castle while on crunch, so checking for historical accuracy was barely on their mind. Not that it makes the final product totally okay, but I don't know if those pieces of concept art were ever expected to be published. If there was any disrespect towards Japan from Ubisoft, I believe it was exacerbated by the scale of the company, not by any individual's malice, apathy, or arrogance. As for arguments about representation, historical accuracy, and I know we killed this word in the 2010s, cultural appropriation, the most I can say is that there is a bit of cringy Orientalism going on here, but nothing worth getting mad about. What harm is there in making a Yasuke anime or musical?
Bushido is the heart of where I stand.
Seriously, the most this situation can lead to is awkwardly going, well actually, to someone excited about Yasuke the samurai. As long as his legend isn't exaggerated to the point of, I don't know, stating he single-handedly saved Nobunaga's life, propping up Yasuke doesn't take away from Japan's history. I, for one, do not want to live in a world where creators can't make art about cultures outside of their background. I think cultures and people should be represented with respect, but I don't want us to measure the quality of art solely on how historically accurate it is. Even the comic artist Sadataro, who is critical of DEI in video games, explains in his comic that the thing he finds most interesting about Assassin's Creed Shadows is that outsider perspective on Japan. The particular framing of tea-drinking manners and the choice of background music are charming to him because they are so clearly made from a non-Japanese perspective. He also admits to drawing the Chinese Romance of Three Kingdoms characters as pretty girls, and that Japanese media constantly plays with historical figures and settings. Even Nobunaga isn't safe from the grips of the mouse. Here he is just hanging out with Stitch. You know, he's just there. It's fun to explore history in silly ways, and we should keep doing that. The Shadows controversy was an exaggerated flame war, but there are seeds of genuine discussion here. I think we should talk about games as a global product and how global audiences affect their production. Let's talk about how big corporations can incorporate diversity without being cringe. We know that superhero movies and the Mouse's films are influenced by Chinese censorship, so why can't we talk about Shadows in a similar way? Because this is the internet, and we're not allowed to have nuanced conversations on the internet. Have you ever noticed that the language of YouTube thumbnails isn't all that different from tabloid magazine covers? Dramatic face close-ups, high contrast colors, you know the deal. In the Anglosphere, there seems to be an unspoken rule for thumbnail text as well. Keep it short and sweet, one sentence max. That's not the case in Japan. Much like Japanese tabloids, it's common to find Japanese YouTube thumbnails filled with text from corner to corner. Welcome to the world of matome discussion compilation videos, or as I like to call them, Japanese SlopTube. Common features of matome videos include claustrophobic thumbnails, anonymous channel names like Japan from the World's Eyes, Reactions from Overseas, and Topical Game Posts compilation channel, AI-generated images, irasto ya stock artwork, text-to-voice narrations provided by either Yukkuri or VoiceVox, the same 10 background songs from Dova Syndrome, and finally, focus on a hot topic, like Switch 2 Scalpers, live-action Disney remakes, and of course, Assassin's Creed Shadows. What channels like the ones on screen do is take posts on Twitter and 5chan and string together that audio with a slideshow of relevant images, sometimes over unrelated gameplay. It's kinda like those AI-narrated Subway Surfer videos that Gen Alpha loves. The thing that bothers me the most about this kind of content isn't that it's lazy, it's that it's cowardly. I thought commentary channels that made fun of cringy queer people over gameplay footage were bottom-of-the-barrel content, but at least those people use their own voices. The whole point of matome-style videos is to compile random internet comments and posts about a certain topic anonymously. It gives the illusion of a vibrant discussion when, in reality, they're cherry-picked opinions that supports an invisible grifter's agenda. Let's not forget where these posts are coming from. 5chan is just a renewed 2chan, and it's currently owned by the same people as 8chan, the place where QAnon was born. And we all know how much of a cesspool Twitter has become. Just to clarify, not all matome videos have insidious content. Some of them are much closer to Reddit storytime videos, where there's an actual narrative or people come together to give each other advice. I stand by that it's lazy though. Mixed in among these matome videos are compilations of subtitled reaction videos by English-speaking content creators, the most popular being Mr. Asmongold.
Do you think that they'd ever make a Civil War movie where you help Nazis? Absolutely fucking not. No. It's because the reason why they're doing this and they're presenting it this way is because it aligns with their worldview and they're trying to push this out there to everybody. That's the reason why.
Asmongold, the giant streamer, brought a lot of attention to the Shadows controversy and accusations of Ubisoft's push for diversity and rewriting history. So much so that Japanese politicians have personally thanked him and his viewers.
なんか海外ですごい注目が集まってるみたいですね。
いや、びっくりしまして、192万回超えもあったんですが。はい。
On the right, we have Hyogo Prefecture Assembly member Hiroyuki Kada. He's the Japanese Diet member who brought the Assassin's Creed problem to the Prime Minister of Japan. Why did he raise this video game to the level of national concern? Well, he argued that action must be taken against those who disrespect Japan, such as troublesome tourists and organizations like Ubisoft that depict real-life shrines in their games without permission. The fact that you can destroy religious artifacts within the game is not only disrespectful to Japan, but it may also influence foreign guests to disrupt the peace of shrines in real life. This is just video games inspire real-life violence all over again, isn't it? To this, Prime Minister Ishiba replied that Japan will make it clear that it will not stand for such acts of disrespect. The issue regarding the game, however, is between the shrine and the game company. From what I know, there is no law stating that historical structures cannot be depicted in games without permission. I'm guessing the most that can come out of this is a defamation lawsuit, if anything. On the left, we have Takeshi Nagase, another Hyogo Prefectural Assembly member, and the guy who brought the Assassin's Creed problem to Kada's attention. Even months after the release of Shadows, even after the game was patched so shrine objects can no longer be destroyed, they are still talking about the game and its supposed offenses. Are they actually going to take action against Ubisoft? I don't know. Most of their updates concerning this issue keep mentioning how they sent a strongly worded letter to Ubisoft, but they haven't heard anything back from them. Oh, such a travesty. It's all just vague concerns about foreigners and blackwashing. What kind of people are so insistent on bringing justice to their local shrines? Well, according to Wikipedia, Mr. Kada became a politician after seeing his home Hyogo hurt by the 1995 Hanshin earthquake. This was one of Japan's deadliest earthquakes in the 20th century, which left widespread structural damage across tens of thousands of buildings, including Hyogo's Yuzuruha Shrine. I can see how Shadow's depiction of shrines specifically rubbed him the wrong way. But seeing how he's against gay marriage and having a female empress, I personally wouldn't vote for him. He's also on the Conference to Japan's Dignity and National Interest, a conservative group formed within the Liberal Democratic Party. It has goals like protecting and recovering Japan from erosion by China and Korea, and its members argued that Japanese citizens and permanent foreign residents' voting tickets should be counted differently. I wonder who else is on this list. Oh. I'm sorry, apparently the group changed its English name recently. They are now called the Guardians to Dignity and National Interest of Japan. Mr. Nagase, on the other hand, seems to have a lot of friends, including Takeshi Tachibana, former leader of the NHK party, and a guy with a wall of controversies and various charges throughout his career. I legitimately feel bad for the guy for getting assaulted with an axe recently, but I can only describe this poster of him with a MAGA cap on top of his bandaged head as nutty. And here's Mr. Kada and Mr. Nagase with Mrs. Mio Sugita, former member of the House of Representatives, known for her hot takes, such as, women shouldn't get married if they don't want their husbands' names. Tax money shouldn't be used to fund LGBT rights initiatives because same-sex couples cannot reproduce and thus have no productivity. And that women dressed in traditional Korean clothing look filthy. Look, at the end of the day, these people have the right to advocate for their political interests, just as I have the right to say, I smell brain rot. Most of the people who get really into the Assassin's Creed problem are not my oomfies. Because if they're not talking about shadows, it's something else like whining about live-action Snow White, LGBT rights, or just being kinda racist or anti-Semitic. Yeah, we're going there. I found one person who got so deep in the anti-Yasuke hole that they landed on the conclusion that DEI is a globalist movement run by intellectuals in big academia. Oh, don't worry, I don't think that Jewish people are trying to rewrite history, but it is interesting that many academics in the US are Jewish. Good God, you're just a walking stereotype. Do you see what I'm seeing? So much of this online Japanese discussion is playing out similarly to Western right-wing and conspiratorial media. While I was writing the script, the Japanese upper house elections took place, and there was a large swing to the right. The far-right Sanseitou Party won 14 extra seats on their Japanese First platform, calling for tougher restrictions on foreigners and advocating against gender equality and diversity politics. The party spread xenophobic claims that foreign workers hurt Japanese workers' wages, that they use a large share of welfare benefits, and have made Japan's society unsafe. Unsurprisingly, the Sanseitou Party experienced rapid growth in popularity through the internet using platforms like Twitter and YouTube. Knowing how social media algorithms have a history of radicalizing people, it's fair to say that SlopTube content about Yasuke and Assassin's Creed are in the same ecosystem as conservative Japanese politics, and I hate it! The news that affected me personally, though, was the one about voice actress Megumi Hayashibara. If you watch anime, I'm sure you've heard her voice before. Some of her roles include Lena Inverse from Slayers, Rei from Evangelion, and female Rama from Rama 1/2. She made a blog post telling people to go vote, which is dandy, but in the context of protecting Japan from troublesome tourists and foreigners, metaphorically comparing them to an invasive species feeding off of native animals. This is plainly xenophobic and deplorable, and I am glad that the Japanese internet called her out on it. But my first reaction was fear and pity. Why wasn't there anyone who stopped her from posting this? Is this backlash going to radicalize her more? Who's going to be next? I didn't think this because I'm a huge fan of Hayashibara. It's because I've heard and seen this before. Sudden bigotry from someone seemingly normal, followed by a cancellation movement that only makes them double down. Also mentioned in her original blog post, it was heavily edited with an apology after the backlash, were mentions of several Korean YouTubers who make content about Korea's anti-Japanese politics for a Japanese audience. I took a look at these channels, and their thumbnails have a lot of provocative text on them, like, Korea is becoming anti-Japanese, Japanese people in Korea, run away, and goodbye Korea, I love Japan. This looks like fear-mongering to me. People deduce that Mrs. Hayashibara felt that she knew what Koreans really think about Japan from this content, and that it fed into her fears about Japanese-Korean tension. When I read about Megumi Hayashibara that day, I didn't see a veteran voice actress who was spreading bigotry to her large fanbase. I saw someone the same age as my mother get radicalized by YouTube. I know that one of the most despair-inducing feelings is seeing things get worse and feeling like no one is talking about it. I didn't even want to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows 4 months ago, but here I am writing the script to cope with this political reality. At least I can say now that I've shared my perspective. And I don't want to paint the Japanese internet as a cesspit of reactionary content either, because it's not. There are creators like Kanataimu, a transgender man and child of deaf adults. There's Soshi Matsuoka, a gay writer and representative director of LGBT activist group FAIR. I'm personally a fan of Masaki Seto's vlogs. He's been a bridge between English and Japanese progressive discourse for years now. He doesn't just talk about feminism, LGBTQ, and social justice, but he also makes an active effort to communicate the Japanese perspective for an English-speaking audience, and give Japanese people the words to discuss issues in the US and such. He even recently started a community focused on discussing social issues in simple Japanese and English. I also recommend following Unseen Japan and Jeffrey J. Hall for timely Japanese news coverage written in English. I hope this video helped you see that, despite the language barrier, the Japanese internet isn't all that different from the English one, for better or worse. I know social media tends to treat Japan as a perfect foreign land, or a wacky place with totally different morals and manners. But Japan has politics, and political discussions too, unlike what some anime PFP might say on X, the everything app.